We all see the glory, don't we? The championship titles held high, the roar of a sold-out arena, those moments that are burned into the history of sports entertainment. We see these larger-than-life characters, these titans of the squared circle who seem indestructible, almost like gods. We see the legends. But what we don't always see is the bill that comes due for all that glory. The unbelievable price paid in flesh, bone, and spirit. It's the phone call home to tell your family you won't see them for another 300 days. It's the agonizing choice to get in that ring with a broken bone, risking it all for one more match, for one more roar from the crowd. Behind all the spectacle, there's a currency of pain, and every single superstar has to pay it. For some, that debt becomes more than they can handle. These aren't stories about fictional characters. These are the real, unfiltered accounts of the pain that fuels the glory and the sacrifices made by legends who gambled everything for their place in the ring. Before the Olympic gold medal, long before the WWE Championship, Kurt Angle was a wrestler staring at the absolute end of his dream. During the 1996 Olympic trials, in the heat of the semifinals, Angle was dropped right on his head. The impact was devastating. He suffered 2 fractured cervical vertebrae, 2 herniated discs, and 4 pulled muscles. His arms went numb. The pain was excruciating. The first doctor he saw gave him the worst possible news. His career was over. For almost anyone else, that would have been it. But Kurt Angle wasn't anyone else. Driven by a stubborn refusal to quit, he found a doctor who understood that the Olympic dream wasn't up for negotiation. The solution they came up with was as desperate as it was dangerous. A series of Novocaine injections shot directly into his damaged neck just minutes before each match. The shots numbed the pain, but they did nothing to fix the injury. Every time he stepped onto the mat, he was one bad landing away from potential paralysis. He didn't just compete, he won. Kurt Angle won the Olympic trials and then the gold medal in Atlanta with, as he would famously put it, a broken freaking neck. That incredible display of grit became the blueprint for his entire WWE career. He brought that same insane intensity with him, breaking his neck 4 more times in WWE. He fought through legendary wars with men like Brock Lesnar and Eddie Guerrero, often when his body was screaming at him to stop. But the physical toll was only half the story. To cope with the constant, searing pain, Angle developed an addiction to painkillers, a private demon he had to fight while the world cheered for the superhero. His story is the ultimate paradox of a WWE legend. A man who became famous for an accomplishment that almost crippled him, who built his legacy by pushing his body to the very edge of destruction. He proved he was an American hero, but he paid for it with a body that would never be the same again. For 30 years, The Undertaker wasn't just a man. He was a phenomenon. A mythical force who seemed immune to pain, fear, or any of the frailties that make us human. But Mark Calloway, the man behind the legend, was very human. And in 1993, during a match with the towering giant Gonzalez, that humanity came bursting out. The schedule in the early 90s was brutal. Wrestlers were on the road for weeks at a time, sometimes performing twice a day. The Undertaker was running on fumes, his body and mind stretched to their breaking point. He was in a series of matches with giant Gonzalez, a performer who was nearly 8 feet tall but, despite his size, was inexperienced and unsafe in the ring. Before their matches, Undertaker would patiently explain to Gonzalez where to hit him. "I don't care how hard you hit me," he'd say. "Just hit me in the shoulder blades." But over and over, in the ring, Gonzalez would pull him down and chop him hard across the back of the neck. After repeated warnings were ignored, something inside the Undertaker just snapped. Following yet another misplaced shot that sent a stinger down his arm, his patience ran out. All the exhaustion, frustration, and pain boiled over. He turned and unloaded on Gonzalez with a flurry of real, legitimate punches, hitting him so fast and so hard that the giant couldn't even defend himself. Agents at ringside were screaming for him to stop. In that moment, he wasn't the dead man. He was a man who had been pushed too far. He later admitted he felt terrible about it, recognizing Gonzalez was limited and didn't mean to be dangerous. It was a rare crack in the armor, a glimpse into the immense pressure and physical toll it takes to maintain one of wrestling's greatest characters. It was a stark reminder that even the most stoic legends have a breaking point, and the frustration from pain and exhaustion is a battle fought far from the cameras. Randy Orton has built his entire career on being the apex predator, patient, poised, and dangerously explosive. But in 2022, he was humbled, not by an RKO out of nowhere, but by his own body. For over a year, he'd been wrestling with a debilitating back injury. A slipping disc caused so much pain he couldn't stand for more than a few minutes at a time. The pain would shoot down his legs, making his feet go numb. He had to rely on his tag team partner Matt Riddle to do most of the heavy lifting in their matches. Finally, the pain was just too much. Orton stepped away from the ring for what turned into an 18-month nightmare. He underwent major spinal fusion surgery, a procedure so serious that doctors told him he might never wrestle again. For 6 long months, Orton believed his career was over. The physical recovery was one battle, but the mental and emotional one was another. His identity, everything he'd been for over 2 decades, was gone. He was the Viper, a WWE legend. Who was he without that? He found himself in a dark place, struggling with panic attacks and anxiety as he faced a future without the one thing he knew he was born to do. But Randy Orton is a survivor. Driven by the desire to come back for his family and for himself, he pushed through grueling rehabilitation. He didn't just recover, he rebuilt himself. When he finally made his triumphant return at Survivor Series in 2023, it was more than a comeback. It was a resurrection. He called it a second lease on my career, a new chapter built from the ashes of what he thought was the end. His story shows the incredible mental strength it takes to beat not just the pain of an injury, but the fear that the glory is gone for good. In the history of professional wrestling, no story is as glorious or as heartbreaking as the Von Erich families. In the 1980s, Fritz von Erich and his sons, Kevin, David, Kerry, Mike, and Chris, were Texas wrestling royalty. Their promotion, World-Class Championship Wrestling, was an empire built on their chiseled physiques, unbelievable athleticism, and the deafening screams of their hometown fans. They were heroes, they were rock stars, they were champions. But the incredible glory they found in the ring was haunted by a series of relentless, soul-crushing tragedies. The so-called Von Erich curse began before most of the brothers ever put on a pair of boots. In 1959, Fritz's firstborn son, Jack Jr., died in a tragic electrocution and drowning accident. He was only 6 years old. It was a kind of pain the family would become tragically familiar with. In 1984, David Von Erich, the brother many believed was on the verge of becoming NWA World Champion, died suddenly during a tour in Japan from what was officially called acute enteritis, though many suspect a drug overdose. His death started a domino effect of grief and self-destruction. 3 years later, Mike Von Erich, who was crushed by the pressure to live up to his brother's legacy and was suffering from the effects of toxic shock syndrome after a surgery, took his own life. In 1991, Chris, the youngest brother, frustrated by his physical limitations and inability to break through in the business, also died by suicide. And then there was Kerry, the Texas Tornado, the most successful of the brothers. He had a euphoric moment when he beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Championship, a victory he dedicated to his late brother David. But even he couldn't escape the family's darkness. After a 1986 motorcycle accident, his right foot was amputated, a secret he hid from the world for years, wrestling on a prosthetic. Weighed down by addiction and his family's unending grief, Kerry Von Erich took his own life in 1993. He had reportedly told another wrestler that his deceased brothers were calling to him. Of the 6 sons, only Kevin survived. The Von Erichs reached the absolute pinnacle of wrestling glory. but they paid for it with a level of pain and loss that is simply impossible to comprehend. The stories of Kurt Angle, The Undertaker, Randy Orton, and the Von Erichs aren't just isolated incidents. They're all part of the vast, complex tapestry of sacrifice that is professional wrestling. Behind every triumphant moment we cheer for, there's a story of a body pushed beyond its limits, a mind enduring incredible stress, and a human being who is risking everything for a shot at glory. These legends aren't the unbreakable comic book heroes we see on TV. They are real people who chose to trade their physical well-being and personal peace for a place in history. They embraced the pain so that we could experience the spectacle. Their stories are a powerful and sometimes tragic reminder that the glory they achieved in the ring was earned with a sacrifice most of us will never truly understand. The journey of every legend is unique and deeply personal. We want to know what you think. Which WWE legend's story of sacrifice and resilience hits you the hardest, and why? Let us know down in the comments. And if you want to see more true stories from behind the curtain of WWE, be sure to like this video, share it with a fellow fan, and subscribe to the channel.